M24/3, and I'll do the karakia. Settle the spirit, clear the mind, prepare the body to achieve what needs to be achieved. Yes. Apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Joyce, Catty Board Chairperson John Clements. Any other apologies?
Apologies from Tiffany Hopping and apologies for lateness for Tessie.
Thank you. Seconder? Thank you, Chris. I'll put the motion in favour, say aye. Against, carried. And I'm not quite sure where the Mayor is, but he hasn't apologised, so he must be on some other business. So the consideration of late items, we haven't got any. Declaration of conflicts of interest, nobody's got any. And public excluded items, no. And public forum, no. So then I can welcome Todd Muller and Nigel Tott from Priority 1. Welcome, gentlemen. You've just timed it really well. Lovely to see you, Todd.
Lovely to see you, Madam Chair. It's very good. And councillors, great to be here, and thank you for the interest in Priority 1. Obviously, our relationship with the Western Bay goes back quite a long way, as a number of councillors around the table will be aware. Nigel Tutt is our Chief Executive, has been for a number of years, and I thought what would be useful is him to step through some of the key metrics in the region, what we're focusing on at the moment, and then open up for any questions that you may have of either Nigel's comments or our annual report more specifically. So that's okay, Madam Chair?
Yeah, over to you, Nigel.
Thank you. Thanks, Todd. Always good to bring a reformed politician into circumstances like this. That's one big. See how many more I can get in there. It's been great having him as chair. Also, Todd's been with us for about a year and adds, I guess, wonderful amount of knowledge, both in the political sector, but also with a really strong background in business as well. So a wonderful appointment for us. I was just going to, this is presenting our annual report. I was going to talk a bit about the economy and the state we're in at the moment, a little bit about what we're seeing in the annual report, and a bit about what we're doing in the Western Bay. So broadly, the economy, as you probably figure out, is, just get that away from me a little bit, is in a pretty poor state at the moment. So easily the worst I've seen it in my time here. And the Western Bay of Plenty had managed to dodge a bunch of the uncertainty and difficulty kind of post-COVID before this, but that hasn't been the case this year. We've been like the rest of the country and got hammered pretty hard. And that's why you see interest rates coming down quite swiftly now, because clearly New Zealand is not in a great spot in terms of what the economy is doing for us, and we need to have better settings to encourage a bit more activity. We're slightly fortunate here. We've still got very, very small growth, whereas the rest of the country has negative growth at the moment. And a little bit the same with unemployment, which is probably the one that we would watch more than that. Unemployment's certainly gone up here, and you would see that anecdotally, but it's not to the same extent of the rest of the country at the moment, although we would expect to see that figure keep rising probably through the first half of 2025. So generally quite poor conditions. You will see people hurting a bit out there, particularly around residential construction, retail and hospitality. They've been the sectors that have been hit the hardest, and let's hope that they can recover a bit over the next year. The challenge for us recovering will be that even though we might get better conditions, we've lost a lot of talent over the last year, particularly around those construction and infrastructure sectors, not just in your chippies and plumbers, also in your professional services people that get everything organised, engineers, etc. So I think it'll be a pretty, I don't want to paint too bleak an outlook, but I think it'll be a pretty slow 2025. It'll return to growth, but it won't be strong. And then we'd hope that from 2026 onwards we can get to much better conditions. terms of priority one, we've had a good year in difficult circumstances, obviously, and our job, particularly in difficult times, is to get really close to businesses. We've had a larger amount of engagement over the last year, particularly with businesses. It's important that we do that to help out in difficult times, and to a degree, businesses actually have a little bit more time to talk at the moment as well, which is nice. We've done a lot more as far as students go, and that's a key part to us. We're very fortunate we have all 11 secondary schools in this region as members of ours, so we're quite a unique model for economic development, and that's allowed us to get to them more. And then we've also had, pleasingly, a bunch more engagement as far as sustainability goes. So that's important because we need the economy not just to be good now, we need it to be good in 10, 20 years' time, and we're going to need to be really good about having the likes of a zero carbon supply chain for our exporters over that period of time. And then probably the other part that I'm really proud of is Araro, which is our skills and employment hub. That works with the people that I guess have the least chance in our economy, and those of you who'd heard me talk before would know that it's really important to ensure we increase wages. It's a problem in this economy, but we also want to just make sure people get a job. That's a good part about increasing wages, and Araro helps people that might have fallen by the wayside and getting them into jobs with trusted employers, which is a key part of it. So lots to be proud of there. Now, I know you're probably going to ask me, you're coming for a reason. I know you're probably going to ask me about what we do for the Western Bay Plenty District Council area, because that will always come up, and you probably say you do everything for Tauranga but not the Western Bay, so I may as well just talk about that now. I guess the main things we do there I can run through, but we're really proud of our relationship with the two secondary schools, so Te Puke and Karikari particularly, and we've had a lot to do with the Karikari Innovative Horticulture Trust, like yourselves, and that's really, really important as we seek to get a better workforce in the future, or people into that particular horticulture area. Greg's on that trust board, and we do tons with that. We also run Cultivate Your Career, which is an industry-specific expo for the horticulture area. Again, we want people to get full-time permanent jobs in that industry, and it's a wonderful industry, so we need to encourage that. Alongside that, we've also done plenty around other pathways, so particularly Canvas Careers Expo, which gets thousands of students to it. So our job, particularly in the youth area, is to make sure people are aware of the pathways in front of them and to show them that. So our work with secondary schools, particularly linking them up with businesses, a bunch of whom are our membership base, is really, really important to get that future workforce in place. We've done lots around the vocational area as well, so particularly in construction. That's a key area, particularly at the moment where we know that construction is going to probably increase over the next couple of years. We know that we're really short on people, so it's important that we have lots of good pathways there. So we actually have a coordinator that goes around schools, shows them what businesses can do and helps them get into those types of areas if they want to. We have lots around the likes of Rangiuru, and we're really bullish about what that industrial development will do in the future. I know it's kind of early days for it, but I would have no hesitation in saying that I think that will be full up as quick as they can possibly develop that. And our role is very much to encourage demand for that and introduce people. We've got, I think, 12 businesses going there in January for an introduction session. So I think it's a really, really exciting development, and something hopefully in a few years we can really celebrate with some businesses being in there. And then in terms of that side, I guess, around development, we're very keen on ensuring that this region has better infrastructure in the future, which you would have seen. So a lot of that is around advocacy, particularly with businesses, and talking about the economic value of infrastructure investments to government. We actually work really well as a team for the Western Bay of Plenty, so James and John do a wonderful job around the table helping that whole equation work. But clearly TNL2 is important to us, as with State Highway 29. Those are probably the main ones at the moment. So we'll keep doing that. That leads me on to the regional deal, which we're working on hard. I expect this region will sub-region will put on a really good proposal, and it will be strong. Let's hope that comes into favour, but we're working really, really hard to make sure that's a best-in-class and winning proposal at the moment. And then that will help us, certainly with infrastructure, it'll help with exports as well, which is the other part. And we're very, obviously we do a lot of work with the horticulture sector and in particular Zespri to make sure that they can put their best foot forward over, not only now, but over the course of time. So that's kind of a brief few things that we do in the Western Bay of Plenty district area. In terms of what you might expect over the next year when we come back and talk this time next year, you would expect to see more work on infrastructure, in particular the regional deal, but also other parts of infrastructure. It's really easy to focus on roading, and that's the obvious one to all of us. We're really keen on looking at rail, and we're really particularly keen on looking at energy. The electricity infrastructure suffers the same challenges as the rest of the likes of roading does. You just don't see it as easily. So we've got an energy strategy and action plan coming out in February next year, which will hopefully set the scene for the next 20 years or so, and hopefully unlock the pathway to increased investment from SOEs and the likes. And we've got lots more in the workforce planning area. Good time to do that at the moment. Businesses definitely need the likes of us involved to ensure that we've got the right talent in the future. And we're really keen to make sure this economy has the right people in it over the course of time. And then a bunch of talent attraction and retention initiatives that we're doing with businesses here. It's important that we hunt as a pack as Western Bay of Plenty. And we've got a ton of businesses that we're getting involved with there to put together essentially a joint pitch for the region. So you can look forward to hopefully hearing more about that next year, and certainly I would hope to be able to talk about better economic conditions than we have now. It's been a tough old year. Most of our businesses are in reasonable shape, but they'll need a bit of TLC. Happy to answer any questions. Lastly, very much appreciate the relationship with Western Bay of Plenty District Council as well. As I said before, it's a good thing to have economic development and councils working quite closely together, and certainly across the sub-region you should be well aware that we put our case very well to central government as a team. So thanks for your support.
Thank you very much, Nigel. I've got 3 questions, and then I've got Tracy ready and a number of us. We were all out at Rangiru, and most of us were with the group at 8, and the manager there was holding on to the phone, hoping to actually get a call while we were there to tell that he had sold one section, one big block. Has that happened yet?
I don't know. I'm seeing Lyndon in about 2 hours, so he'll tell me then. But I think they are. If that's not done already, they're very close on that. Plus,
I know. The second question I've got is, Annie Hill used to work for you, and we used to see regularly items coming in on their laptops about the people who were coming into the region and who were getting jobs because of the network that Priority One had created. And sir, I used that myself when I had a friend ring me and ask me if I could get someone a job. And I said, well, we don't do that sort of thing. And then I thought, Annie Hill. And do you know, within a fortnight, that young man had a job, and it was all because of what you do at Priority One. Do you do it anymore?
Yes, we do. We do it mainly digitally now through social media channels. So we have a concept called Work-Life Tauranga that we use for businesses to work together for that and attract people in. And we can also, if people have contacts, just email us and we'll do exactly the same thing. But we mainly do that via LinkedIn, Instagram and other social media. Yeah.
Right. For all the economic benefits that we've got, housing affordability on your report is 8.7 times. We know that 3 times it's affordable, at 5 times it's not, and we're up at 8.7. It's down a bit, and it's 8 in Western Bay, and I think it's about 11 in Tauranga. How can we get that down, and what do you do working with Smart Growth to ensure that that happens? Because we must be losing a lot of young people who cannot afford to buy a home in this region.
Yeah, you're very right on that. We lose a ton of people in their 20s. It's very evident when you look at the demographics. Well, clearly we need to get more housing supply in. I know that Smart Growth is working hard on that, but I think we all collectively think that a better job could be done. And I believe there's a bit more action at the moment around that, but we simply have to be able to get more land for housing. It's that simple. The other side is of the equation around affordability is earning higher incomes. which we're working quite hard on by trying to attract and grow higher value businesses. But the main thing is we just need more housing supply.
Yes, we are one of the most expensive places in the country to own a home, and most people want to own a home. But so, there's the great challenge for you, Todd.
Madam Chair, if I could just quickly add, housing affordability is a key part, I understand, of the government's expectation of the regional plans that get put in front of them. Nigel's already touched the good work that we collectively are doing in terms of putting forward our suggested approach as a sub-region. And clearly, as you would all know, if we can release 29 in the way that we need to, that's got to be helpful for, affordable housing, or at least more land for housing either side of that corridor. That's got to be part of the solution. So I am hopeful that the good work that we have done collectively as a region, doing the thinking around where the housing should go when it gets supported and released by infrastructure support through a regional deal. If we can get ourselves in the front of that queue, Madam Chair, then I think we can start working on what has been an intractable problem now for this region for 20 years.
True. Thanks. Tracy?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. This one's just a little bit of a question, a little bit in the weeds, really. I see the InStep funding was lower, but it's because it's not yet recognised due to deferred income. But who is InStep?
InStep is essentially a subsidiary of Priority One, and that's the part that works with secondary schools.
Sorry, what was it?
That's the part that works. Is that working properly? Yeah. Trying to get the balance between being loud enough and not echoing through the room.
Shout.
It's a subsidiary of Priority One, so we run it as a semi-separate entity that works directly with secondary schools. And we have a couple of employees within that.
So sort of like a vocational type of exercise, or?
It's more around, yes, it's more around pathways as well. So, for example, we take all of the principals out to local businesses and help them understand what local businesses are doing. We do the same with assistant and deputy principals. We do the same with careers advisors. That connection with schools helps us run the likes of Canvas Careers Expo, InStep Young Leaders, things like that, which is an innovation program. So there's lots there that we get involved with specifically in that secondary school area.
I've actually got a couple more questions. Is that all right? I wouldn't mind a little bit more of an overview on WNT Ventures. And the other two are probably more general knowledge questions for me, really. So the apartments in the Farmers building, have any of those sold yet? Above the Farmers building?
I think that's commercially sensitive and I'm not allowed to say, but I know that I think sales have been lower than they would have hoped for. Some of that is the timing that they've chosen, but I mean the property market is pretty depressed at the moment, so it wouldn't be anything other than that.
Yeah.
But I would
and
have
they've
no
had
doubt
some
that
other
will fill up in a
challenges too,
heartbeat.
haven't they?
Yeah, give it another year, that'll be full. Yeah, WNT Ventures is a technology incubator, so it's actually partially government funded and funded by individuals as well. And it's essentially an investment fund that seeks to invest in early technology-led companies, usually pre-revenue. And they've made some, I don't know how many investments are up to now, maybe 30 or so. They've made some wonderful investments there. And that's part of us trying to provide the capital ecosystem in this region where businesses can flourish, essentially, because obviously you have to have capital to grow.
A little bit of an ice house scenario, is it?
It's very a bit different, but you'd think the same thing, yeah.
Okay, and my last question is, I know with the construction happening at the moment in central CBD, the traffic management is what it is, but is it going to be, how long is the construction going to take to complete, do you know? And is the road, like the circular, only go one way round, confusing everybody? Is that going to prevail after all the construction's completed?
So for the roading, I think TCC are actually deciding on that maybe today. It's not something we've had a lot to do with, and my understanding is they'll try to vary that around based on what's happening at any one time. The construction, I think, realistically, we're in for a similar level of construction for about another 10 years once this current tranche of things is finished. So specifically, what have we got? Panorama Towers, 2 Devonport Road, Northern Quarter, the one up on Devonport Road, the council building. There's lots happening there. Once that finishes, there'll be a whole bunch of other ones happening. So I think there'll be disruption there for a while, but it'll be wonderful in terms of having increased investment there, and vibrancy, offices, etc.
Be nice to get a park, wouldn't it?
Just a question in relation to the statistics that you've quoted there in terms of the sub-region. Oh, is that better? The stats in there. Just wondering, in terms of your footprint, how does that actually extend out? Obviously, Tauranga, and then, but it's not all of Western Bay that you cover, is that right?
Yes, it is all of Western Bay that we cover. So our region essentially covers your exact district plus TCC. And we tend to look at economic statistics based on the sub-region because the economy doesn't really know the difference between territorial authority boundaries. So we look at it like that. If you were interested in specific Western Bay district ones, we can get them as well. We've got them now.
Okay. The only reason I ask is I have previously seen a document where there was sort of a, illustrative map of sort of where the footprint went, and it kind of looked like you sort of ended near Katikati, but that's not right. It is as far north as Waihi Beach and then down to Makatu.
Correct.
Yeah.
This isn't so much a question as a comment, but I'll invite a response. I just did want to highlight to elected members that there's a lot going on behind the scenes, which, as mayor, I'm working alongside Nigel on things, particularly the regional deal and also the Regional Infrastructure Fund, which I don't think you mentioned, which you might want to comment on. And there's been a couple of nearby EDAs which have been dropped by the wayside, might be more accurate, and I've seen the results and it's not particularly pretty. So I just want to endorse what P1 is doing, and that they've been really effective behind the scenes, working with me, working with central government, and getting a few things on. But it's a bit of influx at the moment because we're waiting on central government to some extent, but there's a lot going on. Nigel, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, for those, there's 2 pieces there around central government investment, specifically in economic matters. So the Regional Infrastructure Fund, which is essentially our provincial growth fund, Shane Jones's fund. Really important that we put our best foot forward as a region around what's strategic, and we've done that. There aren't that many projects that we can put into it because the criteria is really difficult, but there is a mountain bike project out at Te Puke that we're working very hard to try to get in there. And then the bigger, more important one is the regional deals, which the government's just announced, but we've been working with them for about a year on that. That's, again, we've got to put our best foot forward as a region, but you would expect that to, deliver infrastructure and certainty, more importantly, that allows us to deliver better outcomes either in housing, jobs, exports, etc. Yeah, and we appreciate working together as well, James.
Councillor Henry?
Yes, I always look forward to your annual report. And I've had the pleasure of using your information to highlight to people who have come in here about our plight in terms of our ready workforce for the industries that we've got here. And I really applaud what you have done. You're dealing with commerce, but you are growing our youth to be able to stay in the district and to be able to gainfully be employed within the district. And I don't think that you get enough kudos for doing that, because it's probably not something that you thought about that you were going to be doing when you came to Priority 1, but you've identified that and allowed us to know what we have to do. And we're looking at that in terms of housing, affordable housing for young families to get to step up on the ladder, that sort of stuff. So that's what we're looking at within our housing continuum. It's not just old people that we need to look after, it's across the whole lot. So that's not a question, but I wonder whether you could tell me something a little bit about this exciting new marine research education, which is actually lifting the qualifications a little bit more. I should have probably known about it, but I didn't. And can you talk about where it's going to be? And
What's your question, Anne?
New marine research and education facility that's coming in 27, 28.
It's the University of Waikato's
Yeah.
facility to, they have a wonderful marine research area at the moment, like world-leading stuff. They were particularly useful when we had the Rena shipwreck, but there's a ton of other things that they research as well. So that is an expansion of that facility to much larger and help them attract much more international research funding and people. It'll go a little bit further on from where they are now, down at Sulphur Point. And they've got a number of people involved to help them do that. But that's very exciting. I guess our vision in the future is that can be a really important part of the economy. We've got large aquaculture areas out in the Eastern Bay, which essentially you can look at as the farm. And we'd love to get higher value crops essentially in the sea out there in the longer term. And that might be algae and sponges and things like that. So it's very exciting. Yeah.
Any further questions? Oh, Grant, Councillor Daly.
Nigel and Todd, I'm just wondering, you must be aware of the Blue Haven proposal near the Papamoa East interchange, and just wondering if you guys were assisting or supportive of that. I mean, Todd just talked about the, preferable locations for new housing developments and, adjacent to motorways and so forth, but have you got any comment on that?
Yeah, we are supportive of it, and we're supportive of it because we're short on housing. So if we're to solve the housing affordability problem, we need to be able to unlock land. Notwithstanding that, we recognise that that's not the easiest spot to develop in as well. So it's not really our area to get involved in the details there, but clearly you want to have some good discussions with the developer in terms of how to do that well. And I assume that there'll be a funding and financing piece that will be important as well there as well. So keen to help in any way we can there, but generally we'll always support more housing land because of the housing affordability issues that we have.
Seems like stormwater and wastewater are the big issues. Have you guys got any done any study into other areas with similar problems?
No, we haven't, but that's mainly covered in the smart growth spatial plan.
Thank you, Madam. I've been also looking at the statistics and trying to just see if I could find some lead, and I guess it's not an easy thing. But first of all, I'd congratulate you on well and truly recognising the energy issue, which I think will be a real hammer home somewhere not too distant from now if we don't get that one sorted, and of course roads, which we all love. But I was looking at the statistics and it's interesting, like a population boost of about 4,000 since 2022. Jobs filled also has gone upwards, which is really great, and so has the mean income. Going up by 5K when we talk about $10 tauranga, as it used to be referred to. So the emergence of an increasing income or family incomes basically improving. Where are we with the egg and the chicken? What's actually driving that little cycle? Because it's a funny one here. That is it just purely the increase in numbers somehow doing that? But things, as you said, are quite mean and tight out there at present, but our incomes are actually going up. Have we some idea what makes people pay more when there's quite a choice?
It's hard to look at year on year, but broadly we have a problem with incomes, right? We look at mean annual earnings there. The issue is that we're well below the New Zealand average for that, and that's something that we have to correct. We're below the national average because of the things you talked about, so $10 tauranga, sunshine kind of wages, that's a thing. Lack of maturity of businesses, so a small economy that's grown relatively quickly, and then the types of industries we've had. What we're trying to do there is to encourage and grow high value industries which create high value jobs, and then get our own people, critically our own people, through that skills and employment kind of area into those jobs. So that's what we're trying to do. We're winning that battle, so we're we're improving our earnings at a faster rate than the rest of the country is. I think we'll get parity in about 2034, and we're doing everything we can to accelerate that because that's a key part in terms of well-being and living standards.
We seem to have finished with those. I'd just like to wish you well. The challenges ahead aren't going to go away. And you mentioned, Todd, that State Highway 29 will open up residential development, but we've got State Highway 2 is now, instead of being off the 10-year plan, is back on, and both are roads of national significance. So I would really appreciate if you gentlemen could keep an eye on that, because the faster they are developed, the more housing we can actually provide and give our developers something to do. Because when we tried to do State Highway 2 before in the Minden, we were told by NZTA that you can't develop too much because the road can't cope, and we're saving it for a Makaroa. Well, things have changed, and so the other issue is that we have the tolling issue that really is of concern to people, and maybe it's something that Priority One could have a look at to what is reasonable. And with your influence, Todd, I'm quite sure you could get that wonderful road out of Wellington tolled as well, if the rest of us have got to have tolls, because we know there is not much money, and somehow or other we've got to pay for them. So, gentlemen, I just challenge you and thank you very much for presenting this morning. We appreciate your coming. And as you can see around this table, they come from Waihi Beach and right out to the east of the district. So people coming here to this table have a considerable challenge to actually get here. And I think we're very lucky in this Western Bay. So thank you very much indeed for work you do and will do.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments to finish. This is an important relationship for us. You're right. The spread of individuals around this table in terms of your collective experience and the breadth of the sub-region that you represent is distinct from the more tighter urban city. It's important for us as Priority One to ensure that we are close to the aspiration and expectations that you have as a district. Secondly, you can be very sure that we're going to focus on State Highway 29 and State Highway 2, if nothing else, because you have my number. You know, that you will continue, no doubt, to remind me of previous commitments that I've made in that respect. And finally, in terms of tolling, I think we can all see that, I mean, the government has still got to put on the table what these new financing tools are going to be, but you're closer to the reality of funding developments locally than I am. It is going to require more to be paid by those who use those roads. And in some respects, we're already there as a city. And a region. It'll be interesting to see how the other regions respond to the reality for them, that those new roads that get built will also have tolls, because that's going to be a way that the government's going to have to fund it. So we will continue to work hard on your behalf, and thank you for your interest this morning.
Thank you. And I've forgotten to use your telephone number, Todd. I shall remember. I'll move the recommendations that the Community Strategic Relations Manager's Report dated the 10th of December, titled Priority One Annual Report 2024 be received. I've moved it and Henry seconds it. I'll put the motion in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As they say, be careful what you wish for. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course, I'm not going to use the phone. Oh. sorry, Murray. You really represent very fine areas, and you've come in behind two people who've contributed a great deal to this district, Danny. And Ross Gowdy, I've worked with him on council and community board for a very long time. And so you have big shoes to fill, and I wish you all the very best, because Waihi Beach needs good leadership, and you're capable of doing it. So well done. As for you, Chris Denver, you take over from Peter Presland, who has really been the man who has sort of gone under the radar, and yet he has done an awful lot for Mokoroa. And I don't know if the concerts that he organised, if you want to run those as well, but I tell you, he did an awful lot, and I'm sure you'll enjoy Mokoroa, so we wish you well as well. But thank you for being here, and we look forward to your participation. So, and I know
Yes. Morena elected members. So the report that I've got on the agenda here today is about our Welcoming Communities program. The purpose of the report is just to update you all on the program and where it's at, because we're just about to go through our re-accreditation for that program. I just want to acknowledge that this report was authored by Sam Wilburn, our Community Outcomes Advisor. Sam has recently resigned from Council and has moved on to Tauranga City Council, a new opportunity there, which is very exciting for Sam and very sad for us. Sam was the main relationship manager and coordinator for this Welcoming Communities program. So I just want to acknowledge all the work that Sam has done in this space. And you can see all of that from the report that's been put together here today. So I will speak to it today. Please excuse me if some of your questions I'm not totally across and might have to go away and come back to you on that, but I'll certainly do my best. So Western Bay District Council, just for a quick overview, we have been in the Welcoming Communities program since 2018. It is an accreditation scheme that was set up under Immigration New Zealand. The purpose of it is kind of really from an economic development point of view, but it's about ensuring that communities, when newcomers are coming into those communities, those communities are, I guess, growing their tolerance and awareness and creating welcoming environments for newcomers, so that when newcomers come in, they essentially feel welcome and want to stay and want to be able to contribute to the new community that they've now made as their home. So really important for Western Bay of Plenty, given that our economy relies a lot on, in particular, seasonal workers. So ensuring that seasonal workers, when they arrive here, they generally come from overseas, that they arrive and feel that this is a safe and welcoming place for them to be, and then they return year on year, which in turn is very essential for our primary sector in particular. So we have been in the program since 2018. It does sit under Immigration New Zealand, as I said. We are currently at stage 2, which is we are an established welcoming community. We're just going through a re-accreditation process at the moment, which will hopefully move us to being an advanced welcoming community. I think the advantage of being in a scheme like this is that it just gives us a framework to work towards with how we engage with newcomers, and we have the ability to also be able to engage with other councils that are part of the scheme and see what people are doing across the country to create welcoming environments for newcomers, and it's just a really nice framework. We also work really closely with Tauranga City Council on this because, of course, it's very much a sub-regional economy that we have, as Nigel and Todd were just explaining, and so we do have a very, very close relationship with Tauranga City Council around this. So what we have to do for the re-accreditation is stories of impact. We have attached those for you so you can see there how they apply across the 8 standards of the Welcoming Communities accreditation scheme. Sorry, not the 8 standards, the 8 elements of the scheme. And that is the program. So it's really just to provide you an update on it, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Murray. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Jody. You mentioned that we'd be one of the first councils to reach this level. Who are the others? Or are there any others?
So the other council that is also aiming to achieve this, as I said, we did used to do this as a partnership with Tauranga City Council. We're now sort of working on it separately, I guess because both councils have kind of reached that level of maturity where with their communities. So Tauranga City Council is the other one that is looking to go to the advanced stage.
Any further questions? Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at page 57 here, and I'd like to publicly acknowledge the work that I know that Nina has done, and particularly around translating some of the high-level council documents into Punjabi and Hindi. Now, I just wondered, is there some form of, rather than just a thank you, like I feel that Nina deserves something more from this. She's done an incredible amount of extra work that is not a part of her job title, and I'd like to hope that she's acknowledged for that. And I want to also say that I know for a fact that when Māori documents, they're translated from English into Māori, a lot of money is paid to that, and I'm talking hundreds for one document. So I'd like to see some real acknowledgement for Nina, because what she's done here is huge.
Jody?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to acknowledge Nina. I took everything that Councillor Ray has just said. That is, Nina has done a power of work supporting the organisations that are in Te Puke and council as well, with engaging with the community, the Indian community in Te Puke, and not just in Te Puke. She's also part of the wider Western Bay Indian Association, and she has done all of that in a voluntary capacity. It has been, really massive. I do want to acknowledge that that does come with a really significant time commitment from Nina, as it does for anybody from our ethnic communities who are translating from English into their native language. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a time-consuming activity. There are words that do not directly translate. That the translator needs to really do a lot of work around what is the best way to phrase things. It's not just a straightforward, put it into Google Translate and out it comes. It's a much more nuanced and a much higher skill level required than that. So on that, we are really aware of the commitment that Nina has made there. It has been just outstanding, and we are definitely mindful that that has been entirely on a voluntary basis. In particular, where she has done those translations for council, that is something that we will be discussing with her further for the future in terms of her time and capacity and how that works.
And sorry, thank you, but I know that she's a very humble person, and she would probably say, oh, everything's fine, but I would just love to see for her to get something, even if it was just
Councillor Ray,
koha.
when we move the recommendations, you might like to move a further recommendation that we thank her for the contribution that she's making above and beyond the norm. So I'll come back to you on that one. Any further questions? Councillor Henry.
Yeah, this report was very enlightening, and I thought the accreditation story impact were very, very stunning. And this mahi is very important because within our region, we totally rely on our migrant workers, whether it's through the RSE scheme or whether the people have moved here to work. to maintain the industry that we have within here in our horticulture. So it's vitally important that they are supported and they are able to navigate this, well, in the beginning, in the new country that they've come into. And I just think this is just an excellent piece of work, and I don't know how we can send that on to Sam. Yeah, I think it's great. The point that brings to mind now is that we have Kia ora kaupapa team, and I would see, because we know the statistics of our ethnic makeup in our area, and Asian and other groups actually make a higher percentage than our Maori population. And okay, then you can, I'll let me finish and then you can correct me. But I would like to see a support. Is there like Sam's gone, so what sort of staffing support is around that is where I was leading to. Okay, you can correct me on the statistics, but that was the point I was trying to make. And I'd like to hear from, if you can tell me now, or if it's not and you're developing it, that would be really good to know, I think.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, yes. Really critical that we have staff support and staff engagement in the Welcoming Communities program, not just with one person on staff, but across the whole team. And you can see through some of these stories, there are a lot of teams in council who have been involved in different parts of that work. We will be obviously recruiting to replace Sam's role, and so part of that will be looking at how we are resourced to continue to support the Welcoming Communities program.
Councillor Coxhead.
Madam Chair, just before you do that, just to, because I am aware that assertion was received by council through the representation review process by a submitter. I did seek out the correct information at that time, but just for council's information, our Asian population in particular has grown from one census to the next. So at present, the number of people of Asian descent in our district currently stands at 7% of the total population, which has grown by 1,206 people in between census periods, and our Māori population is 22% of the population.
I've seen different statistics, but
right. Councillor Coxhead.
Oh, actually, just on that, Rachel, does that include the Indian population as well? The Asian population?
Yes, Asian includes Indian, but doesn't include Middle Eastern, Latin American or African, or other ethnicities.
Yeah, thank you. Jodie, thanks for presenting the report. Nice to see you. I just wanted to comment, really. I was really pleased to see the RSE workers event. I thought that was lovely. They're quite a big part of our community now, and they've really become very familiar with like our region, and we've become very familiar with them, I guess. So it was lovely to see that there was some sort of celebration and recognition of the impact they have on our industry, our largest industry, or one of the largest industries. So yeah, good on you, or good on you, whoever.
Thank you. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, Madam. I'm interested actually in just how, with us progressing through this scheme, I hate the word scheme actually, this plan, and going to level 3, what other effects does it have? Does it have, as we step it up, and I'm sure wanting to see this sort of thing happen, do we get other resources and support elsewhere? Do we get more financial support for this? Or is it something that we have to make sure we plan for within our AP and LTP?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. The short answer is no. There's no additional financial support that we get from central government agencies or anything like that if we move through the accreditation process to the next stage. I think what it does is it just recognises the maturity of the council in that, and it sort of sets you on a path to keep, I guess, not to sit on your laurels, to keep striving to really embed those practices in your organisation. In the early years of these sorts of programs, you know, you around this table, you would have seen this a lot. Programs get set up and they run for 2 to 3 years and a lot of good stuff happens and then it stops, and all of that has not had the time to fully embed in an organisation or in a community group's practice, and so it just falls by the wayside again. I think what this does is it just motivates the organisation to keep striving and to keep embedding that in the program, and that's the real strength of it that I see for us.
Jody, there's no doubt that what is being achieved is really quite remarkable, and so it's a great shame that Sam has gone, but I'm sure the work will continue on and we'll take credit for anything that he has done. As you work closely with Tauranga City, for a young family coming from overseas who are of a different culture but speak English, and they have a problem and they don't know where to turn to, and they call the police because there's nobody else that they know to call. Is it possible in some way to find a way where we can give people who are coming in, who are from a different ethnicity but are speak English really well, advice as to how can we get the advice as to who to turn to?
Yes, so through you, Madam Chair, there are many organisations that can provide support and advice to newcomers. The first ones that come to mind for me are Citizens Advice Bureau, who we have a direct funding relationship with as well. So Citizens Advice Bureau do have exactly those sorts of resources for newcomers. Welcome to the country, welcome to the community. Here's the services that you can access, and they can provide that support. The second one is the Migrant Support Network, which operates across Tauranga and the Western Bay and connects all of those different organisations that provide direct support into that network. So that's groups like the Pacific Island Community Trust, the Indian Association, and others that provide direct service support. So there's many networks.
But if you don't know any of them and you've just arrived and your furniture hasn't arrived and you've got a problem, who do you call?
So my advice would be to contact the Citizens Advice Bureau in that situation. But I think it's about, this is, you know, always that first point of contact and engagement. I think that's the challenge that we continually face across all of the engagement around access to services is how do you get the right person to contact the right service at the right time. The best way to do that is to have as many avenues available as possible. The other really key avenue is our libraries. Our libraries as a first point of call for newcomers is, I don't think we can underestimate what those spaces provide for newcomers to communities, that sort of safe, welcoming space. That is what a library is.
They know all that now, but when they came and he called the police because he didn't know who else to call, and then it was just a chapter of errors from that time on. There is a man who was employed as a constable for the Asian community. Is it possible to meet with him or to ask him how they connect people who are coming from another country who are of Asian descent and how they communicate with them? Because quite clearly it can go horribly wrong, and it has.
Yes, so through you, Madam Chair, I think you're referring to the cultural liaison officer that the police employ. That gentleman is a member of all of those networks that I just mentioned. So he has all of those connections and can link people to the right places. I think it's just a matter of whatever the internal practices are for police to get the cultural liaison officer involved at the right time. So that is their practice to manage.
I'll pursue it, Jody. I'll pursue it. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Daly.
Jody, I realise you not responsible for the report, but my question is related to, and Councillor Ray and myself had a discussion about this last night, but the census data, and we know that probably a lot of Asian people who come here as, you know, RSE workers or brought in on work visas and so forth probably don't fill out the census. So have we got any indicative data that reflects maybe the true situation rather than just what the people that fill out the census form? Are there other avenues of gathering that data?
Through you, Madam Chair, you're correct. The information that we have used in the report is from census. That is the most reliable data that we have. To try and get other data outside of census and to try and reach those people is administratively massive, well outside of the reach of a council to do on its own. So as you will have seen with the census process, that's a huge undertaking to get that level of data. So we do, it is the most statistically correct data that we have in the country, so that is what we use. In terms of any other data or data collection process that you went through, your ability to actually test the reliability of that data would be really limited. So we would not ever advocate that we try and get data outside of that process. I think it's really important to remember that the numbers themselves are just the numbers. What you're wanting to look at is the trend over time. So if that's showing that your numbers are increasing, that's the really important trend. We have put the numbers in there, but they could change. They could be 100 out or they could be 200 out. It's the trend that you want to be looking at. And what we can see is that the ethnic diversity of our communities is increasing. It has been increasing for a really long time now and will continue to increase into the future. That's the trend. That's the important thing that the numbers show.
I think, the numbers that are shown here, like 3,633 Asian people, I mean, intuitively we know that is sort of probably from the number of people we see in Te Puke, the property owners, the people that turn up to the Sikh parade, for example, that, there's probably this is probably 100% out or 200% out, possibly. I don't know, my point is really we're sort of basing our program on if we're basing our program on these numbers, we could potentially be considering a whole lot more people than we already are.
So through you, Madam Chair, what the census shows is that the population of Te Puke is around about 20% Asian, and a significant number of that is Indian. I think that is probably very accurate for that community. To say that 1/5 of that population is Asian population, I think is about right. We do also know that a really high proportion of the Te Puke population is Māori. I think it's about 25% is Māori. And so I think, from my experience in Te Puke and knowing that community, as a breakdown of that population, I think that is actually entirely accurate.
Just one last point then. I mean, probably 20% probably does feel right, but there must be other avenues that the census process uses rather than just relying on the feedback forms to get that data, because if you're relying on purely the responses from the people, then you probably wouldn't arrive at 20%.
Right, and I think that comes to a conclusion, Jodie. Oh, Laura, sorry.
One last question, Jodie. I was looking through the 8 standards under the program, and I noted that in the self-assessment part there is 3, in particular 3.3, 4.4 and 7.1, that it doesn't have a number attached. Is that because we haven't yet completed those, or we're still working on that, or what's that, please?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. That is something that I also noticed for the first time this morning, and I think it's just an error in the self-assessment form. So we will correct that before that goes into Immigration New Zealand. Thank you, Councillor Ray.
Thank you. Councillor Granger.
Exactly the same question, Madam.
And you're satisfied with the answer? So that brings us to the end of the debate, and I think, Laura, are you going to move the recommendation that the Community Outcomes Advisor Report dated the 10th of December, titled Welcoming Communities Programme Accreditation, be received? And it'll be seconded by Councillor Henry. I'll put the motion. In favour will say aye. Against, carried.
Clarify something. The statistics for Asian population, that's 17.5% was for Katikati, so it's not across the district. So apologies.
You're muttering, darling. Put that mic a bit closer to you so I can hear you.
Oh, the figure I gave for 17.5 for Asian population in our district was for Katikati, not the whole district.
Thank you, thank you. And the further recommendation, instead of that, Laura, it will be recorded in the minutes, your thank you for Nina in the minutes. So you'll be able to talk about it at council, I'm sure. So that brings us to the end. No, it doesn't. We've got our housing action plan, and that's for information. So if we could have that report, please. What's that person's name? Emma? Small. Simi? Small. Just too obvious. Simone, thank you for joining us. We look forward to your report.
Tēnā koutou katoa. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name's Simone Kewers. I'm the Strategic Housing Program Lead in Jodie's team. It's been quite interesting writing the presentation and the progress report for the Housing Action Plan. I was reflecting on the fact that this started way back in 2018, way before my time, so I'd like to take credit for a number of things in the progress report, but that would be probably be a bit of a lie. I just started in the role 2 years ago. So we started with the Housing Action Plan back in 2018, and this action plan, now 2024, was a refresh on the 2018 plan. So as we know, housing is a complex area with many facets to it, and we're working across the areas where we can have an influence, but also working with stakeholders in the community, and there are many, to achieve what we can in terms of improving housing outcomes. And it can be quite a long time frame for some of that mahi to actually come to fruition. So the Housing Action Plan 2024 was adopted by the Strategy and Policy Committee in June this year. And also brought a discussion paper to this committee prior to that, and use the feedback from yourselves to help inform the final plan. So today I'll go through and give a progress update. In the report I've detailed progress across each of the 29 actions. So for the presentation I'm just going to speak to some of those. So I'll take the report as read, happy obviously to take questions. So what are we doing, and why are we doing it? So the vision for Housing Action Plan 2024 is that all Western Bay residents are well housed. And what this means is that people have housing that's affordable, accessible, habitable, with security of tenure, and appropriate to life stages and differing needs. There's a lot of elements in there, and I think all of those are covered throughout the Housing Action Plan, which is why there are indeed 29 actions in the plan. So the good old housing continuum. So apologies to those who've heard us speak to this before and possibly many times. It's just a really good tool, I think, 'cause I'm a bit of a housing nerd, a really good tool for looking or breaking housing down into its different elements. So this is what we know as a housing continuum. It starts off with emergency housing on the left-hand side there, or ultimately actually could start with homelessness, which unfortunately we see in our district, in our sub-region. And it goes through to social housing, what's known as assisted rental, assisted ownership, through to the private market, whether that be rental or private ownership. So the idea is that people would progress through the housing continuum. So someone living in social housing may be able to move into an assisted ownership program, or into assisted rental, or into a private rental, for example. So in terms of social housing in our community, what that looks like is housing provided by Kāinga Ora, Accessible Properties Limited, in the case of Te Puke, not in Katikati, and also Tauranga Community Housing Trust. Again, that's in the case of Te Puke, not Katikati. So that's social and community housing. Assisted rental, what that is our elder housing units are assisted rental RSA flats, of which, for example, there's 38 of those in Katikati, and also Abbeyfield House, Abbeyfield Western Bay Plantee, which is being constructed in Katikati, possibly started earthworks this month as we speak. Assisted rental refers to a rental property that's below market rates. So it's people are eligible, or people are not eligible for social housing. So they need support to be able, financial support to be able to access a rental property, but not eligible for social housing, but can't afford market rental. And assisted ownership in the middle there, what that is, some of you will know of New Zealand Housing Foundation. There are a number of entities in New Zealand that provide assisted ownership. It's also known as shared home ownership, progressive home ownership, rent to buy. So New Zealand Housing Foundation are one entity that have a project in Mokoroa. You Own are another entity that provides shared home ownership, and also Doing Good Foundation, which were previously Habitat for Humanity in the sub-region. They do provide different, they provide services to different cohorts. So You Own have a certain household income that they require for people to be eligible for their program, which may be different to, say, New Zealand Housing Foundation, etc. And in terms of the whole continuum, we want people to be living in warm, dry, healthy homes, regardless of where they are on the continuum, and also for housing that is accessible across different life stages, to also be available across the housing continuum. And each community will have different housing needs. So this is why we have a evidence-based approach, so using data to planning housing in the district and in some of the urban areas of the district. So on to progress and what have we been up to? So the four here, you'll see the numbers are the numbers of the actions. So it's not that I got lost and forgot 2 and 3. So number one action in the report is the local housing networks, so that we facilitate local housing networks, in this instance in Katikati and Te Puke, to bring together the stakeholders in that local community across the private sector, so builders and developers, real estate agents, social housing providers, central government, so Kāinga Ora, MHUD, MSD, and also social service providers and the likes of Grey Power, depending on the community, because communities vary, obviously. There might be a peak body for an ethnic group involved, bringing together all the key stakeholders involved in housing in that area, developing a evidence-based, data-driven housing needs assessment, and then a housing plan, which is about what are the needs for that particular community, which indeed this housing action plan is as well, but it's district-wide. So we've obviously been at work in Te Puke for quite some time and for a shorter time in Katikati, but nonetheless powering ahead. And sort of reflecting on, well, what are some of the outcomes? I think just looking at the central government investment in Te Puke and Katikati has been really significant for a district of our population. So a total of 88 units of housing coming into the district. So whether that be through the Affordable Housing Fund for the Abbeyfield House and the elder housing units in Katikati, or the Kāinga development in Katikati, or the Kāinga Tauranga Community Housing Trust, accessible properties, social housing developments in Te Puke. So moving on to something completely different is how do we do our business internally? So what can we do differently internally? And one of the processes that's being worked on this year is a business improvement developed for resource consenting. So there's more detail in the report. So how we work with large-scale developers that do a lot of mahi in our district, how we run our pre-application service, and yeah, I'll probably refer to the report for the detail there, and there'll indeed be more work to follow in 2025 in that area. What we also do is keep track of as things change. So I heard conversation about census 2023 and data and what's accurate and most current. So we are in the process of getting a piece of work done for us using the census 2023 data to just really track, well, what is changing? What are our communities looking like? What do we need to tweak and do differently? And we also support provision of warm, dry, healthy homes through the 20 Degrees program. So I'll just briefly mention, and why I mention this, even though this is a national evaluation of the Healthy Homes program, is that our provider, 20 Degrees, which you can see their logo there, they are a key provider in New Zealand of the Healthy Home program and have been for some time. And what this national evaluation of the program has found has been really quite significant in terms of decrease in hospitalisations, people involved in the program, reduction in school absences for children, a slight, and they said, but persistent increase in wages and less need for benefits for adults. And I think thinking about that, what that means is I think there's significant economic outcomes and benefits for a community because people are able to return, maybe not have so many absences from work or return to the workforce, etc., and better educational outcomes. So this theme is about specific projects that we focused on in the Housing Action Plan. So there's three sort of theme areas here. So the elder housing in Katikati, which is well on schedule for completion August next year. Next year being just around the corner now, scarily. Can I just say that's a stunning photo? I took that on my camera, on my phone, on a beautiful day in Katikati a couple of weeks ago. So we're powering along. And supporting housing initiatives in whenua Māori is something that I know has been discussed a lot over time, and I'll just speak to two initiatives there, although there's more in the report. The feasibility studies that we've supported for Te Aroaki Tai and for Tuapiro Marae are both moving into the next phase. So for Tuapiro, they have a resource consent application in now for Papakāinga development, and for Te Aroaki Tai, they'll be looking at next steps in terms of infrastructure and actual housing development. And the last one there is we committed to looking at utilising or exploring options to utilise Kotahi Lane, which is a council-owned site in Katikati, to leverage housing outcomes. So I completed an insight housing analysis, looking at the constraints and opportunities of the site. And the next step we're looking at is to get the viewpoint of private developers to gauge their interest and feedback on the viability of developing the site. What we're moving into now is looking at actions that are about sort of moving along the housing continuum, starting off with the social and community housing, so the left-hand side of the housing continuum. So supporting social housing developments in Te Puke and Katikati are obviously key here. So for Te Puke, the photos there are from earlier this year when Accessible Properties Limited opened their one-bedroom fully accessible unit development in Seddon Street in Te Puke. There's a total of 86 additional public housing places being delivered or planned for Te Puke, which is really, I think, really significant.
Sorry, just to add quickly to that, those are not all delivered by Kāinga Ora. That's across Kāinga Ora, Tauranga Community Housing Trust and Accessible Properties. Accessible Properties being the largest social housing provider in the Tauranga and Western Bay area. Kāinga Ora here is a bit of a bit player in comparison to Accessible Properties.
Just checking YouTube. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge because Te Puke and Katikati and Mokoro are quite different in terms of when you're looking at social housing. So in Katikati, the only provider is Kāinga Ora, not Accessible Properties Limited or Tauranga Community Housing Trust. So those community housing providers are very active in Te Puke.
James, have you got a question now?
It's for number 15. I was going to ask where that's going, because my understanding was it basically been pulled, but perhaps you can update me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. James. So for the housing Kāinga Ora housing development in Katikati on Meadowbrook Drive, resource consent was signed off by council in August, and the roading is complete because we needed to construct a road in order to enable that development, which is 18 units, a mix of configurations, but mainly 2-bedroom. At this stage, we don't have any further updates from Kāinga Ora on the status of the project. We are in communication with them. We're obviously very eager to find out the status of the project. Yeah.
I've got a question from Councillor Coxhead and another one from Councillor Henry.
Just on APL Limited and the housing there, presumably a lot of that's for elder housing. Yeah. And is it rented or is it owned accommodation?
So through you, Madam Chair, the APL development showing up there, the Seddon Street one, is all 1-bedroom units. It is primarily, I think all of the units are fully built to accessibility standards, so it is primarily for older people. It's not tagged as elder housing as such, but it is primarily older people who are living there. Accessible Properties portfolio for that development is essentially assisted, well, it's social housing. So it's people who are on the income-related rent subsidy, and it is rental accommodation.
Sorry.
Just one other thing that I thought was really great with this development was that the majority of people who moved in there are from the local Te Puke area. That's quite unique in terms of, for some of these developments, people are housed into them straight off the social housing register. Accessible Properties did a huge amount of work with local providers that they had relationships with, like health providers, to find people who were locals who needed accommodation, who met the criteria for social housing, and to then be able to house those people in their local community. It was a really great outcome.
Right, Councillor Henry.
Yeah. really think that there's a big bang of work that's been done here, and well done, Simone. What I'm
Anne,
about
could you
to
just
say,
pull
I
that
don't-
mic closer towards
I
you?
don't want you to think, but I do have some reservations about the type of housing that has been proposed for Katikati. We have a huge amount of people that are over the age of 75. We have another outstanding statistic over 65. Yes, we have people who are living in certain areas across the district in crates. But we also have a young community that are not able to find housing and take employment within the town that they're in. And I say to our residents who are living in these 3-bedroom house, 2 people in there, you may not be able to find the people to buy that house. You may not actualise the income that will generate for you when you go into your retirement home, because there's nobody there who wants to buy it. All the young people have gone. So my point is, and it's about this point 15, when we came into council and Blaze went round and trimmed off little bits of sections all over the district for housing or for strategic purchases to do this very thing, we were told that social housing in that area of Middlebrook was to be a mixture of housing, but maybe it's purported wrongly up there. And we'd had a number of the residents that bought in that Middlebrook block that they were looking, what they bought, they were looking onto reserve, and we sold it off. So is it correct that it is all social housing, or is it like we were told that there's a few bits of, amongst that 18, there were a few social housings and there were other bigger properties and that sort of stuff? Is that what it is, or is it all social housing?
So my understanding it is 18 units of social housing with a mix of size of dwellings, so for different age groups. So 1, 2 and 3 bedroom.
Only 2 is up there, which was not what we were told. So I'm feeling quite disappointed if that's how they've gone ahead with it, because that is not what was sold to the Katikati community. And I do have some other points too, because those 2-bedroom units, if they were, I guess that would young couples be eligible for that, or is that a criteria that in terms of your income and all that sort of stuff? Because those are the sorts of things that we need for young
It'd
families.
be a range of age groups would be eligible.
Okay.
So social housing is, so people apply to go on the social housing register with Ministry of Social Development, and throughout that process, they get a rating and they get placed on the housing register.
Yeah.
So various age groups.
Yeah. And not to bang on about Katikati all the time, we do have a shortage of our quota, or what we had of elder housing in Waihi Beach. Is that ever considered? And I know that the community board are very, very keen to have the land developed between 2 Mile Creek and Edinburgh Street. Are you aware of that, Simone? Has that come to you?
Yes, so Kerry Little and I attended one of the meetings with the Waihi Beach group, and we spoke to some of the sites that were under consideration, and yeah, just gave them some feedback on some possible ways forward.
So others may want to speak on that, but it is very strongly felt within the community and not just with the community board.
Thank you, Anne. I've got Laura first. Councillor Ray.
Sorry, I thought we were waiting till the end for questions, so I just want to go back to number 10 if I can. I note there that it says that feasibility studies, associated infrastructure and planning reports would come to council end of November. It's now the middle of December. And have I missed that, or is that just we're a little bit behind?
Sure, thank you. That's a bit confusing. So to council staff.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So will we see that sometime in the new year, or?
So through you, Madam Chair, the process for the feasibility studies for the Papakainga is managed under Te Arawa Ki Tai, which is a subgroup that was set up through the Te Hui o Te Waka o Te Arawa Partnership Forum. So that is the, I guess, the kind of governance oversight that was put in place for the feasibility studies. So that is where those feasibility studies are reported back through.
Member Dani.
Yeah, a really comprehensive report, so well done on that. Just picking up on what Anne had said about the Waihi Beach plans, I guess for the rest of the committee's benefit, just a little bit of an update on that for you. So there is I guess, an informal committee in place at this point, made up of a couple of the community board members, Heather and Wayne, and others in the community who came together after the floods last year and felt really strongly that the 7 units that were demolished should be replaced and maybe some more. So where they've got to at the moment is they've set up a trust deed. They're looking at formalising that in the new year, handpicking some initial trustees, and then they'll be seeking to have more formal conversations with council around what support could be there, not necessarily financial, but in terms of the planning for that. And they're obviously looking at funding and location. So it's quite early days, but they're a very committed group of people who are driving this forward.
Thank you very much. And now, Alan.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, I will follow on a little bit with that. Definitely encouraging them to actually formalise the trust, because I think we need now a body that can actually deal with organisations such as council, developers, etc., with some actual clout. So it's a really important thing now that be formalised. And I would encourage council to really do its best, which I'm sure it always does, to assist with the possible siting of properties or potential for sites, be they be developed with that new trust, or even if it's a totally separate situation. It's the housing that's really the key thing that we need, but that trust is aimed at that specific thing. The other area I'm interested in is just when we get back to Kotahi Lane, how far along are we with actually talking to private businesses about that? Is that just starting? Has it gone down a bit of a road? Have we got some idea, a feeling on where that might go?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have done some in-house work on that site. Some of you will know it's actually zoned commercial. It's not zoned for residential use. So there's a few things that need to be worked through with that site. It has a number of other constraints in terms of, in particular, the access out of the site onto the state highway. So we've done a bit of work around what the constraints and opportunities are there just as an in-house exercise. We are now having some discussions with private developers to get kind of their take on it. We'll be bringing that back to our executive leadership team to then discuss what the way forward might be with that site.
Councillor Henry.
I believe that the Kaitohi Lane is a service lane, it's not actually a road, and that the properties, the buildings are commercial. But I didn't think that the land that was purchased from the Taylor brothers had actually been categorised as anything yet, that it's still a strategic purchase. And that's the land you're talking about, isn't it?
It's zoned as commercial. Do you mean the zoning?
The zoning on one side is, but the land that's on the Uretara side, I don't believe has actually been zoned, or it's still a strategic purchase, is how I understood it.
Zoned commercial.
I'm sure, Simon, you'll be able to investigate that and come back to us.
Yeah, it is zoned commercial.
Okay, it is, yes. Okay, so we talked about this last triennium, the group, and James was councillor, and I think might have, I don't know who the other one was, James. We had a few then, didn't we? Might have been Alan. And I'm trying to make myself look like I'm not saying something negative, which I I just want to reiterate what we discussed when that became an option for us looking, and Blaze was in seat then. We were going around looking for options, and the little bit of by the cricket pitch was Middlebrook was one that came up for housing, and this one was too. And we were quite resolute that we would want that to be targeted young professionals, not social housing. So you will probably remember that, but I don't know, we've never had that discussion, I don't think. So I just want to make that out, because this other thing about encouraging youth to come into our ageing town is also a really high priority as well.
So, so through you, Madam Chair, so yes, that was definitely very clear, and we are really well aware that that was the message from the community board. I think the first step is the land feasibly developable, so that's the stage we're at the moment.
Right, Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know whether it's going to be on the next slide or not, but this is a question to do with emergency housing. So I don't know, you may be going to cover it next slide, or is this the only slide on emergency housing?
There's no more slides on emergency housing.
I'll ask my question. You're probably aware we have 4 adults and 2 cats living in 2 cars in a Mokoro, and they've been down on Kinu Reserve for months and months, with cats near a bird reserve, which is interesting. And council needed to seal the car park, so the cars had to disappear. And I am reliably informed that they were towed away by Row Motors. So I don't imagine these people paid for their cars to be towed. So I presume it was council who paid to tow them away and took them to a much more visible location, which has rather upset the neighbours. And, you know, I know that they rely on the food bank, and I've got no idea how you cook and prepare food in 2 cars, but that's another question. Is that the best we can do, is just tow them to a different reserve?
Thank you, Councillor Granger. Just in terms of privacy and confidentiality, I'm really familiar with that situation. And I used to manage a homeless service in Tauranga, and I've been working closely with compliance staff for some time. And if a service is now working with the family that they've accepted to work with that service. There's many nuances to these sort of situations. But yeah, what I can say, which is a really positive change, is that they've accepted to work with the service fairly recently, and that service would offer them options away from living in a car.
Can I just add one more thing? 2 of them turned up to assist with the food bank drive and packing parcels and working very well. So they're contributing back to the community, which I found was really fantastic.
Jodie.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I just want to highlight to all of the elected members that in Simon, we have someone who is really highly experienced in working with people with high and complex needs who are without shelter, so homeless people. We are really fortunate in that. It's really unusual for a council to actually have someone on staff who really understands all of those complexities and has worked on the front line for a number of years with people who are chronically homeless. So when Simon gives advice around how we can manage these situations, you can bet on it that it is accurate and is really solid advice on how to manage these situations. So I just want you to be really aware of that and just to acknowledge your work in that space. And in particular, as Simon said, we have to always maintain people's privacy in these situations, but Simon is familiar with that case and some others in our district and is working really hard with our in-house staff, also with service providers around ensuring that the right support is provided. I think the key point that Simon made is that the people that you're working with have to be prepared to engage with services. That's the first step, and that in itself can be a process and has been in this case.
Thank you, Simon. tell me, with homelessness amongst women, drug addiction, alcoholism, and domestic violence are three critical issues that affect some women. Is there any support out there for them?
There is. There's a lot of complexities. What we know about homelessness is that it's generally consistently as a result of childhood trauma. Lots of research internationally, so a really strong evidence base. So the sort of support that people need, probably access to housing is probably the key gap, which we know in our community anyway, whether that be social housing or private rentals, but also the support services that do exist. There's a number of fantastic support services across our district that the approach is working with people long-term, to not in all instances, but often long-term, to support them if the road gets a bit bumpy. Some people, it's a lot smoother. So there are support services. Yes, the very things that you mentioned are some of the drivers behind homelessness. So family violence and drug and alcohol use can obviously, probably, I could talk about it a lot, but probably not the correct setting. Yeah,
We'll talk again. Tracy, the last question.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad to know you're there, Simone. Yeah, it's something that really concerns me as well as homelessness and and the escalation of it as well, and all the multifactored reasons for it. You know, mental health, this is how we treat our mental health patients nowadays, and yeah, it's really upsetting. Do we actually have any shelters, like, you know, I mean, it's obviously a short-term solution, but do we have any shelters either I don't think we do Western Bay, but in Tauranga at all?
There is a night shelter in Tauranga, a men's night shelter, Takitumu House, which is funded by MSD. It's down on the bottom of Elizabeth Street.
It's run by an exceedingly capable woman.
Absolutely. It's Anne-Marie Angus, and she's done magnificent work for many, 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 many years. A shelter can work for certain cohorts. One of the things, so absolutely, it needs to be part of the suite of responses. When you have people with what we call complex needs, so what that may look like is someone has, as a result of trauma, so stepping into the psychology space, as a result of trauma in childhood, has poor emotional regulation as an adult, may have a head injury just as a result of events throughout life that can also impact on emotional regulation. So you might find it really hard to live closely with other people, particularly closely with other people that might also have complex needs. So some people need to be living separate spaces, in the same way that for some of us, you know, living alone or living with a partner is, whereas you would never have a border, whereas other people would love that or welcome that. So just as a sort of an example. So having access to housing is key, along with services that can provide that what's called wraparound support straight away is a model known as Housing First that can be very, very successful, for example. So a suite of options, including emergency accommodation through Ministry of Housing, MSD. Some of those policy settings have shifted, so around emergency accommodation provision, so there is less. So that does probably put some pressure on.
Madison Centre, has that closed or is it still going?
I haven't been working in the field for a few years now, not that I know of. I think they're probably funded through DHB. Is that Waihi Road?
Yeah, no, it was sold, so I wondered if it was still continuing doing that work.
They may be providing services out of another venue. That's a residential support facility for people with mental health and drug and alcohol addictions.
Well, Simone, we'll let you get on with the report.
Thank you. I don't know how I'm going for time, Madam Chair. I've just got 2 more slides.
Okay.
Yep. So financial, just re-gearing, financial contributions So having the incentives that council agreed to the policy setting to incentivise social and community housing via FinCo reductions, we've started to see uptake of that. So Abbeyfield, which are building a 14-bedroom home in Katikati for older people, took up that opportunity. So that's like an assisted rental, you could probably call that. So it's not a retirement village, it's not a rest home, it's not social housing, but it's a certain, it's an option for a certain cohort of seniors, which is also useful to have a suite of opportunities for, excuse me, seniors. Second last slide. So then moving through to that assisted rental, assisted ownership. So one of the things that we've been working on and continue to work on is identify and support new project opportunities as they emerge. I mentioned earlier that projects can quite have a long time to come to fruition, which I know that you would be familiar with. So that means you might have a meeting with someone, a developer that comes in to talk about a piece of land that they don't even own yet, to get a sense of, well, what are the requirements, what's the zoning. In some instances, it might be about if there has been a housing needs assessment done, you know, is there a gap, is there a need for this? So a good example there is Abbeyfield, so the work that was done prior to me arriving. So by Jodie, working closely with Abbeyfield, Western Bay Plenty, in the lead up to where we are at now, which is that they received funding from the Affordable Housing Fund and have been fundraising and will soon be starting to build on site. So that's also a very important part of the work that we do. Looking at council-owned land for development opportunities, and that includes Heron Crescent, so the elder housing redevelopment in Heron Crescent and Katikati. So there'll be a net gain of 15 new units on that site. So warm, dry, healthy housing for older people. And again, FinCos come into play, so incentivising for Māori housing development, and so Tawhatinui Marae were successful in receiving FinCo reduction as per our FinCo policy for not-for-profit housing. So tiny homes or minor dwellings, tiny homes. Recently, central government put out MB, put out a consultation document named Making It Easier to Build Granny Flats. So that was around mid-year. So they're really looking at ways that can be enabled. So they received 2,000 submissions on that, which is a lot, which I think you would appreciate. And they've been summarised, and they're going to go out and consult again early next year on the basis of the number of and the range of issues raised in submissions. And I understand that their proposal has been scaled back a little, just looking at some of the risk around building failure, liability, assessing for natural hazards, etc. And we will have opportunity to comment on that when that comes back out. But that's certainly something that we're watching closely. And the last one there is looking at different housing tenures and some innovations. So the example is licence to occupy. So that's where people, say if Simon wanted to move into a licence to occupy, that's most common, you probably hear it in regards to retirement village settings, but it also relates to the likes of Seaforth Village and Waihi Beach. That's the licence to occupy model. So Simon, I would be paying the owner to lease the land. I might own the house, the dwelling, but I don't own the land. So we've been talking to a developer in Katikati who's looking to develop a licence to occupy product in Katikati, so 6 units, and that being more affordable to purchase, because if I'm buying it, I don't have to buy the land and the dwelling. I'm just buying the dwelling, and then I pay a weekly fee to the to the owner. And it just becomes a more affordable to purchase product, but still a private market product.
Did you have a question there, Tracy?
It's probably a bit of a stupid one, really, but, you know, do we have any council land that we could actually look at doing leasehold? So, I mean, I don't suppose we want to end up being in a situation where we're developers or whatever, but that's another alternative, isn't it?
We have looked closely at the council-owned sites, and at this time, there aren't sites that don't have a purpose already allocated or that are suitable.
Mm.
But that's, yeah, certainly an area that we've been assessing.
Oh, Councillor Daly.
Just in view of our submission to the managed retreat climate change paper, and also in view of the fact that Kotahi Lane is actually a floodable zone, maybe that could be an option for Kotahi Lane in terms of council maintaining a lease and allowing development on there, so that we could terminate as the sea level rises, if it does.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think with Kotahi Lane, the key thing is it feasible to develop the site? Is somebody going to get a reasonable rate of return from whatever gets built on there? That's the work that we're doing at the moment. That's what we're going to be bringing back to ELT. And that's regardless of any of those options around whether you're leasing it or doing the development yourself or whatever happens there. So that's the number one question. Everything else will follow from there.
Right. We'll just complete the report, Simon. And could
Thank
I
you,
just
Madam
ask a question? The 20 Degrees program, where we've done a really lot of good work, is that fund still available? And does it come from central government, or are we funding it from our council? Jody or Simon?
So the program is funded through a variety of sources. So Te Whatu Ora provides some funding, and indeed, so the hospital will refer families or individuals to the program because they're seeing, say, children with respiratory disease, etc. We do provide funding to that program, so through the LTP, but I think the majority of the funding is from central government philanthropics, so the likes of TECT and Bay Trust provide funding so that they can provide service to the Bay of Plenty wide region, so across other districts, not just ours.
Right. Thank you, Simon, and thank you for your report. And there's no doubt that people who are living on a wage today and haven't got enough to save, this problem isn't going to go away until we improve our performance as a country. So thank you very much for the work that you do. We don't need to have a formal recommendation for this because it's information only. So I thank you very much, and I thank councillors. We'll have a late morning tea now, and our workshop will begin at... You got a question, Grant?
Yeah, sorry, I underlined it early right at the beginning and I was going to wait.
Mike, yes, Mike.
Yeah, so I've got a question that I flagged earlier. And it's on page 65, and you talk about an example of the networks providing a vehicle for galvanising action around complex housing issues is MSD's engagement in the Karikari network, improving collaboration between central government, council and local support services around homeless people with complex needs to achieve housing outcomes. So the question is, does that happen in Te Puke, or have MSD in Te Puke been taking an active role in that kaupapa?
Through you, Madam Chair, Lucy McCarthy, who you'll know, is the manager of the local WINS office, which is MSD. So yes, they are very actively engaged in the Te Puke housing network.
Yeah, I mean, this does seem to be above and beyond what I've seen in Te Puke potentially.
Through you, Madam Chair, no, it's the same.
So above and beyond the Simon, the work that you do, thank you. So I declare the meeting closed, and give the community board chairs an opportunity to speak, update anything you want to relate to us before we start our workshop. And the workshop starts at what time, Rachel? Oh, we'll do, yes, we'll be back here at 11:45.
Yeah.